Welcome, this is Steve Danyew from polyphonic.org, and I'm very pleased today to be joined by Michael Francis. Thanks
Great
for being
pleasure.
with us.
Thank you.
This is a continuation of our series of interviews with the guest conductors of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra this season. This will actually be our final one, and it's been a really fun season of interviewing the guest conductors as they come to town and sort of share their vision for what they're doing and how they got to where they are, and advice for young musicians. So it's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate that partnership that we've had with the RPO this season. So Michael, again, thanks for being with us. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you became a conductor, how you got to Rochester here.
So I was a double bass player, and I played as a child, my teenage years, and I was going to go to university, but I was going to go to music college actually, but I felt that I would get better academic training at university, and by that stage I was starting to be interested in conducting. So I went to Cardiff University and had a great time there. And then I went to the Royal Academy because I felt if I wanted to become a conductor, I needed to play in the best orchestra I could. So I played double bass and joined the London Symphony Orchestra. I was fortunate enough. And from there, I started doing jump-ins, and that was it. And from it just sort of snowballs onwards, and I'm here in Rochester having a great time.
Great, yeah. Well, that's a perfect sort of segue into my next question, which was going to be that it seems like you sort of jumped in at the last minute in several circumstances that really helped you build your conducting career initially. What was that like? I mean, take us through that, preparing at the last minute for that kind of situation.
Yeah, well, I'd say that the first one, I was in August '06, and I was in Vilnius, Lithuania with the LSO. And we discovered Gergiev was in a plane and he was delayed. And we had to rehearse Shostakovich 4 that afternoon for an evening concert. And so the managing director came up to myself and another bass player who happened to do a little bit of conducting and said, "Will one of you take the rehearsal?" And he said no, and I said yes. And upon such decisions, our lives changed, and I started. It went okay. And then January '07, Gergiev was sick and he couldn't fly, and it was music by Sofia Gubaidulina, and they couldn't find a proper conductor. So I ended up doing the rehearsals and the concert for that. But probably the most dramatic one happened just a few weeks after that in February '07, when we were on tour with John Adams, the American composer and conductor. And he went sick in Cologne, and the next day we had a concert in Luxembourg. So he managed to get through the Cologne concert, but he looked very poorly. And the next day the chairman came up to me and said, "Michael, we think he's not going to be able to conduct. Can you prepare the scores?" So I learnt them that afternoon. We had played them before, so it wasn't like it was brand new music, and the orchestra knew it. So I ended up conducting that concert with, I think, a 45-minute rehearsal. So mainly it was sight conducting. Wow. But yeah, and then a few years later, I did a jump in for Andrei Previn with Anna Sophia Mutter, and that one really launched my career forward. So it's sort of a mixture of bravery, stupidity, and lack of awareness of what I was actually doing. I just thought, well, why not?
And obviously, people knew that you had that ability, and you were someone they could call on. So.
Yeah, I mean, I can learn reasonably fast. So I've done a few other ones since in San Francisco, in Oregon, and a few places. It's more difficult to do now because my calendar is fuller, shall we say, than it was beforehand. But it's still an exciting thing to do. I quite enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, you do travel around the world and guest conduct really frequently. What is your sense in what we see as sort of a changing musical world? Do you still find classical music to be really vibrant and important in these cities that you visit?
Well, I think the even bigger question is classical music still important? And absolutely. Of all the art forms, it's the one that bypasses intellect, and it goes straight into the heart and affects us all in a very profound way. I think every human society going right back has had at least three things: a form of survival, a form of deity, in whatever description it could be, and some form of primitive music. So music is so intrinsic to our very nature, and I think that's exactly the same. I mean, iPods, Apple, iTunes, I mean, what an unbelievable business that is. It shows how important music is, whether it be classical or not. And for me, classical music is thriving. I think it's changing, the orchestral models are changing, That doesn't mean that classical music is not as in demand. I think naturally people in their child rearing years don't have as much time to go to concerts, but as they do when they're a little older. And I think younger people before their child rearing years have a little bit more time. So you do have this slight gap, but I generally find it to be in good health.
Good. What I was going to ask you, sort of a lighthearted question. What's your favorite part of being a conductor or a musician?
Well, playing music, actually. I mean, that's the thing. It's just such a wonderful thing to do. I get to do what I love doing, and that's my job, so that's tremendous. As a conductor, I think the great pleasure for me is facilitating an environment in which other musicians play better than they thought they could. When that happens, because you don't make any music when you wave your arms, you're just still trying to show gestures to help others make the music.
Sure.
And when that happens and the composer's intentions are being transmitted in an eloquent way, and the musicians feel connected and empowered, and the audience feels engaged, then that is such a joy. So that's my favourite part, helping someone to play better than they could.
Sort of all the things happening at the right moment, all those pieces coming
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
And sometimes just seeing someone have a sense of pride that they've done something differently, and they're just the sort of shoulders back, and that's really rewarding. And to sort of bring, and also on the other side of conducting, you become a voice for the community. You become an artistic leader. You provide a vision through a season if you're a music director or you're a chief conductor. And that you can then bring new music to people who they would have, so composers they would have previously been a little reticent to hear. And then seeing them just having their eyes opened in a brand new way. They don't just have to hear Forza del Destino, Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto, Beethoven 5, great pieces as they are, but there's other things outside. And that's deeply rewarding, stretching the audience and stretching players as well.
Great, yeah. One last question for you. For young musicians who are interested in taking on music as a career or maybe even becoming a conductor, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think I'll speak just to conductors. I think that's probably easier. That's where I have a bit more knowledge. I would say, firstly, make sure you love it, because you've got to love it, because it can be a lonely job at times. You're on your own, travelling around. I would say, understand the composers as people, not just as the notes on the score. So learn about the people. Learn about what goes on behind the score, so you have a deeper emotional understanding of that. That's really important, because that's the stuff that ultimately matters. Then the next bit of advice I would say, where possible, play in an orchestra. Even if you play the piano, just try and play the piano parts in an orchestra, or attend as many orchestral rehearsals as possible. Just watch and observe and talk to orchestral musicians, and see how a flautist will react differently to a trombone or a viola. To the same concert with the same conductor, it's often very different reactions. Just get a feeling of the psychology of how people are, and learn your scores well, because people will know if you don't. Apart from that, good luck and enjoy it. It's a wonderful job, but make sure you want to do it.
Yeah, great, sage advice, I think. Yeah.
I'm not sure.